I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and with my friends from allfreeknitting.com, today we're going to show you a tutorial on how to dye yarn with food coloring. The type of food coloring that you can use can be anything from liquid food colorings to even very old paste food colorings. The other items that we will need to dye this yarn are a heat source, and I'm going to use a pot on the stove, some water and wool yarn, and I'm going to just pre-soak the wool in the water so that way it will allow the dye to absorb more evenly. And the final component after heat, color, and yarn is acid. And as the acid source to let the dye adhere to the yarn properly, we're going to use some white vinegar in our dye bath. So I am starting to heat my dye bath on low heat on the stove, and I want to reiterate that you should never leave your cooking yarn unattended. To the dye bath, I'm going to add some of the vinegar. I'm going to add, the amount that you add is not super important. For this batch, I'm going to add a tablespoon of vinegar per cup of water that's in the dye bath. So I'm adding 2 tablespoons of vinegar. The amount that you need to add is not by any means exact, and you can actually, after the color is gone, reuse the same dye bath multiple times. And I'm just going to stir this up to distribute the vinegar that is our acid source. I am wearing latex gloves. It's just to protect my fingers from color, not because anything we're dealing with is dangerous. Everything that we're dealing with are things that you can commonly find in your kitchen. And I think today I feel like trying to make some blue yarn. So because sometimes you might want to try to reproduce the color of yarn that you want, it's handy to count the number of drops that you add. But just like you would check a dye lot on any yarn that you buy, don't count on reproducing a color, so try to dye as much yarn as you'll need for your project in the first time around. So I'm not really bothering to count here. I'm just adding, so I'm adding a ton of blue here. Normally, for a skein of yarn that is this size, so pretty small, I would only add maybe 10 to 20 drops of food coloring, but but I want a darker color, so I've added more. The nice thing about dyeing yarn yourself is that if the color that you get is too light, you can always add more food coloring to it and let it sit in the dye bath longer to get a darker color. Okay, the dye bath is simmering and it's time to add the yarn. I'm gently squeezing the yarn out of the bath where it was sitting, and plop, there it goes into the dye bath. You can see, immediately you see some blue color, but that hasn't actually stuck to the yarn. It needs to have some time with the heat in order to absorb. I should mention that you should not stir the yarn while it's in the pot. You can gently move it and check it with a spoon or fork, but if you stir the pot, you risk felting the yarn and ending up with a big blob at the end. So we'll now let this simmer until the dye bath has lightened. The dye bath has now cleared considerably. You can see how the water is looking significantly less navy. So I am going to turn off the heat and let the dye bath cool to a temperature where I can handle the yarn comfortably. You can see that most of the dye has now cleared, and I am going to take our deep blue yarn and place it in the sink in some lukewarm water with some mild soap, and gently, without a ton of agitation, clean the water. Now you will wash the yarn until the water runs clear, which means that there's no longer, that all the dye that is with the yarn has adhered to it. And then after that, we can hang it up to dry, and congratulations! With the help of me, Rebecca from ChemKnits, and my friends at allfreenknitting.com, you have successfully dyed yarn with food coloring.